Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Mind Your Mouth podcast. I am your host, Melissa Mugno. And as always, I am so excited to introduce today's guest. Like most people that come onto the pod, it is not just about colleagues or people that I find interesting, but the most important thing is I get to hang out and talk to very good friends. And today is no different. So welcome to Mind Your Mouth, Neel.
It's good to be here, Melissa. I'm really excited to be on.
I am so excited to have you on my podcast this time, as you have been so gracious and so kind of letting me come on yours. And it's always been fun to chat with you. You are one of my favorite people to talk all things universe, body, life, all of the above. And I'm super excited for today because I think we can kind of dive into a lot of cool things that you've been up to, as well as some of our time together that we got to hang out in Chicago. I want all the listeners to know and hear all the cool things about this. I don't want to gloss it over too much, but this like full body approach, right? This concept of not just the mouth, the floor of the mouth, but really connecting all the dots. And I think that's where I would love to start a little bit for some of the people that don't know. You went on a little bit of a tour last, I would say over the summer, towards a little bit heading in, right? When did it start?
Yeah, it started pretty much in January, beginning of the year. And then
so it went from the beginning of the year, just kind of wrapped up, right? In August.
Just wrapped up in August for my Chicago trip. But I'm going to do a little bite-sized one here in LA at the beginning of November. So that'll officially be the last module of the year, which will be
okay. So there is one more. Okay, but that's just one in your backyard,
kind of like
in your new backyard.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we go from Chicago, where I used to live growing up, to finishing out the tour in LA. I'm in Santa Barbara, and it's only like just about an hour away to get to this fringe of LA, which gets me kind of like in this beautiful place I love, Santa Barbara, but right there in that proximity of where people from LA are like, yep, this is where we want to be.
So Neel, just to start off, to let everybody know, tell us who you are, what makes you so special. Why are you somebody that we all need to be listening to and talking to? Just give us a quick little elevator speech.
Yeah, I will. But first of all, I want to say this podcast is awesome. You started it, but it's like you're somebody that once you start, you feel like you've been doing this forever. So it feels like you've come in and it's like, oh, Melissa, who's been rolling out, you've been speaking, teaching. So many people, they're tuning in, they know that. But from a podcast perspective, it's like, oh, yeah, Melissa is seasoned. You already got so much dialed in. So I already feel like what a cool experience to be hosted by you. So it's a treat.
Well, thanks. It means a lot for you to, even to say that. I had you and I spoke about this, but I like the podcast has been one of the more, it's definitely presented some obstacles. It was definitely something that I was given a lot of opportunity. I could have just, threw it off to the side because it felt like I couldn't get it to just gel, right? Like it just wasn't syncing. And it really was an opportunity for me to lean into my faith and whatever that faith be, the faith of higher power. And it brought me back to trust, which is, I've spoken to you about it. Trust has been the number one thing that I have been really dialing in on and working through, whether it's trust in myself, trust in others, trust in the process. And the podcast has been the ultimate opportunity to test the trust. I knew it was something in my heart. And then on some of my retreat last February, it was super clear that this is what I needed to do. Didn't need to question it. I just needed to stay focused on it. And I did. And it does feel like this last month or 6 weeks, it's been like dialing in and the content has been flowing and it feels like home, right? Like It feels exactly what I'm supposed to be doing listen, let's be honest. I just can't shut up in general. So I might as well have a platform in an open forum that like it's meant to just talk.
Yeah. And I mean, the kind of topics and the mindset you have and the breadth of not just knowledge, but human existence that I think from our conversations that you come in with, makes me excited because I know this is a foray into like consciousness and awareness. And for sure, I'll like locate us into like what I do, my practice, my trade, my craft, and why I went on this tour. But then after that, I'll just allude to I'm excited to talk about that, but I'm way more excited to talk about. But why did that even start? Where did these techniques and protocols come from that I feel like are blazing the lives of people who come learn it? And, of course, those who have, like I've been able to have the good fortune to work with one-to-one or even in some kind of group formats and teaching my movement therapy classes. Like, where does that
Well,
come from? So that's I'm excited to go there too.
let's just go back to we'll tell everybody that's how it started. So just to fill any in, especially for some first time listeners, in true Melissa form, I really do love and trust my gut nowadays. I listen to my gut. I used to look at my gut as almost like a trigger. Like, I would get like belly aches a lot as a kid, and a lot of, like most children, the intuition is so strong in the gut. But when I would get that gut intuition, it almost would create anxiety for me because I
Mm-hmm.
used to think like, oh no, something bad's happening, right? Or like
Mm-hmm.
if one thing's happening, a domino effect's happening. So throughout this process, I really had to work and heal my gut, literally and emotionally, physically, literally, all of the things, structurally, behaviorally,
Yeah.
all of it. But recognizing and then finding the blessing in my gut of that my gut is really my compass, right? And that if I trust it, it's here to protect me, not to hurt me. And I saw, ran into you. I was always very drawn to your content in general. I think that is one thing about my gut. If I see somebody talking, I should say this, that is connected with themselves on a higher level, like on a level that they're taking themselves seriously, but not too seriously. You can see that
Mm-hmm.
they're answering to a higher realm, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. They're like literally getting downloads, and to me, it feels like you're pulling something out of whatever you believe in, and then you're executing it. And I felt like I could see that. That's where I think social media is really fabulous. People will come through on camera, and you can just see in the way they do. And that is something I noticed with you very early on. And so when I ended up in a setting with you, I felt like I knew you. That's the truth. It felt
Mm-hmm.
very like we had known each other, and our spirit, past lives, and maybe not this lifetime, in another lifetime we were friends. And I went right up to you and I was like, hey, I love your content. I've been following you, and I'm really amazed about how you being part of Dr. Zagi's treatment, because that's what I was consuming, that content when you were working with him a lot. And of course, from my history of working with him and knowing him personally, I felt like you being part of his story was a shift. Now, he was doing a lot of things, but I think him taking his body, and you could just see how serious he was about getting aligned and being grounded. And I felt like you were definitely a part of that team. So when I saw you, I went right to you and I was like, hey, and just we started talking. And I think you would agree pretty quickly. We kind of gelled on these higher concepts, realizing that the work that maybe we're both doing in this airway space was like a calling, from something bigger. And then there we were in the middle of a hotel lounge, and I'm like, can you work on me? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
needed your hands on my head. I like needed you to unlock and unravel. And then from there, I just think it's just kind of grown and went on. And so, yeah, today I'd love for us to get to know you better, the man a little bit behind it. How did it all start? Who you are a little bit, and then maybe we can dip into some other areas there.
Yeah. What came up when you were talking was, I think, important because I was just thinking of that moment where we talked instant rapport and connection. And then, like you said, then we sat down. I was just working on your cranials. And I think a lot of people, you're like, well, yeah, it's just when you get into a flow, if you're the person putting hands on someone or receiving, you can shift brainwave states like instantaneously. So there was some craniosacral, and it was pretty much like a dialogue as we did this. So it was an unusual type of mini session to have in the lobby, but it was fitting and apropos. And I was just thinking about Dr. Zagi, others, just from babies to adults. If I could sum up like one kind of perspective of what I do, to then dive in a little bit deeper on the backstory is, I look at myself as a multi-tissue or interdisciplinary healer, and I talk about like the tissues that I work with most. Of course, the floor of the mouth is the aperture and the window through which I look to see the entire body. But I work on all the muscles, fascia, bones, organs. And to me, that includes also, we can talk about lymph and glymph and, working on the vasculature. But to kind of stop talking about a bunch of like our body tissues, I work with those to see what change can happen. And then when people come in and we have emotions at play or traumas, or, just they don't even know it, but they're carrying some kind of mannerism they see through mirror neurons in somebody else in their family, or they're empathically carrying that area in their body. So to me, that's important, because if I'm working on somebody and it's not their issue, but someone they're connected to, sometimes when we just utter that aloud, the issue lifts and I don't work on it. So to me, it's really important to like, I work in an efficiency model, but also depth core relationship. I want to really meet people where they're at, help them quickly. And also I want to kind of help them feel heard, understood. So what I do when I'm with somebody, people will say like, would you just tell me like what you find? And I was like, hands down, I'm going to do that. I will go through all the tissues when I'm working on them, and I'll tell you the vectors as we work on them. And some people love that. And I'm like, for the other people, I'm like, let it be a meditation and a narration. And so in that, if I'm saying, yeah, your right parietal more than the left, and right sphenoid, and it's flexed anteriorly, right lacrimal, ethmoid, zygomatic, and then I'll talk about the different tissues of the hyoid, where it's the vectors, people feel on a multi-tissue system known, and their body feels heard. And I see people just melt before I ever do any work, because they're like, you explained all these different areas that I don't usually hear at once, because that's how I work on these different channels, mediums of the body. We'll stick to that to start. And I bring into the room an audible kind of description of what I'm finding. And of course, some of this sounds normal. It's like, well, we're going to do in a findings assessment, but then we'll go to the next level where I test into internal changes, whether they're dealing with things in their consciousness, their blocks there, in their heart and emotions, or even in the core, which is usually what happens in the first 5 years of life. We'll sense into those places, because if there are things going on that people need help processing through, I get to be a guide for that, and I get to connect problems to areas in the body, because we all know the body keeps the score. But I get really specific, and I'll say, oh yeah, that fear is actually living in your parathyroid gland. And for me, it's customized. I love the systems out there, the Ayurvedic, the Chinese medicine, beautiful other systems. And so somebody's like, does, grief, and I wonder if that's in my lungs. I'm like, it could be, because that's like a top 5 thing to say. But in this moment, your grief is actually living in your parathyroid. And if we can extricate that on a very simple, systematic bodywork way, sometimes these emotions, these feelings leave. And then I see the floor of the mouth loosen, and then I see the lips and the cheeks loosen, the skull, the cranials and the facials expand. And then, all the other muscles in the body that we're dealing with, they melt like butter instantaneously. So for me, I guess where I'll end in the description of what I do is, whether we call this somatic transformational work, or like I used to call it airway feeding work, it's shifting the body into a whole different state, which some call the vagal tone shift. But for me, it's different, because we're dealing with a brainwave state and a body wave state. So it's a multimodal state change for the entire being, that when we're done with that, which can sometimes just take minutes, maybe a half an hour tops, then I say to the person, okay, now we can start. Now we can actually start our session.
Now you can actually start to like get into it.
Yeah.
So I want to back up a little bit, because I thought it was really interesting. This is definitely an area that even if I tried to stop talking about it, I don't think I could. Right. The issues are in the tissues.
Mm-hmm.
And just to go back, I've been saying for the last 3-4 years, when I went to my team and I told them that I needed to add into our paperwork that we needed to say something that doing this type of therapy could open up a feeling in people of insecurity, childhood trauma, holding on to things, which could ultimately be the limiting belief or the retraction, like the body's way of like trying to retract or hold on to the trauma because it's the comfort zone. And so naturally, as humans, people will say, oh, I don't want to do that anymore, it's not working. That deflective way of handling things, which I think most of us do. I think most people can relate to that. It's kind of, I feel like, maybe pre-programmed into our hard drive. And that goes into like ego work and all that stuff, which we all have an ego, there's nothing wrong with it. But this physical body, this monkey suit that we're wearing, is this beautiful armor that protects us from life, right? It's all about protection. But you got to take care of the armor in different ways. And it's not just structural, physical, it's all these different aspects. And I think what we're talking about right now in these couple minutes right here, this is what makes most of my traditional medical doctors really uncomfortable, like traditional dentists or any of them. Mm-hmm. It's too woo-woo, Melissa. And I said, I was the least woo-woo person. If you had met me, before 40, maybe that little towards the end, maybe 38, 39, I was definitely yearning for more. But I was the most, give me a pill, quick fix. But I couldn't run, I couldn't run from my own insecurities. And every time I got to a place with a client and I only hyper focused on one thing, I knew there was more that we could do, right? I felt like I had this opportunity and I was leaving it short by not trying to break in a little bit more, and showing them a different ravel. And I almost just want to kind of nip that, because I know that a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's not real science, that's not real medicine. But I don't know one person that has a physical ailment that it isn't affecting them on an emotional level. And then I feel like that gets stored. What would you say if we had a cut, like, where do you feel with that? How do you navigate something like that?
Yeah, I mean, totally resonating. And I think it's important to say too, like there are all these entry points into like, how do we go about a discourse on this? Like if we're somebody who are like, if we're a provider and our appointments are, a chiropractor, I'm a chiropractor, right? So I'll explain more about how I've shifted from being a traditional chiropractor to not just an airway feeding chiropractor, but then more of a multidisciplinary body worker. But if I'm a chiropractor who's got 2-3 minutes with somebody, like a practice that I used to be a part of, you're not going to delve deep into these waters, right? You're going to handle those misalignments, correct the things, help the people with their pain or function. And that might be what you do, right? And so a lot of dentists I know, they're like, I don't have time, Neel, to like talk about this and delve into this. I'm like, you don't need to. You need others within your world who can co-rig this ship with you to go there. So I think it's mainly like subtle clues and tapping in and tuning in. And I think a lot of the people we know do this really well, and it's called bedside manner in some, capacities, and but others it's called like tuning in and sensing, interoception and exteroception, right? Awareness. So the body does keep the score for sure. And I think that means that trauma lives in the body and it's stored in the tissues. There are the issues there. And often by even not working on them, like by breath work, right? Or by different kinds of multifaceted work when we're, even myo, tongue tie releases, people have these experiences where it's uncorked, right? Unraveled, like you say, and the body releases in however it's going to release. So this beautiful that we just get to be witnessing this. And so I think we do a pretty good job overall. A lot of people who are watching probably are like, yeah, I just have so many conversations with people where they're like, this is what I'm seeing and I love it. But some people you might see like that person got really, cold and distant, like all of a sudden in the encounter with them in the appointment, or, they really have a hard time relaxing around anybody, or they're just, they don't say much. They're very quiet, or the other end, right? Sometimes I'm this way. They just don't stop talking and they don't let you talk. So sometimes, and I'm like this in instances, I think these are good times to where we can say, like, find that other person that you have that has a little more time and space in their schedule or their appointment setup, their session length to go deeper. Because I've been on both ends of the spectrum. Somebody who's had 2 minutes with somebody to, like I said, I've had one person who's been in for a 9 hour session one day. And we have time to go everywhere in that 9 hours, right?
Yeah.
There's no stone left unturned, and we can delve into every thought, every tissue to a very, very, very extreme degree. But we don't need that with everybody. So, but I also like to say the body keeps the score like a musical score, like a soundtrack. And I feel like we walk around and we have these soundtracks and we need tunings. We need people to remind us like who we are. We need our voices to remind our brains, who we are, because 5% of the brain works by sound propagation, right? So when we say things aloud, we remember who we are. Well, the body keeps this score. It's like a musical score, meaning I think that that's the way I love navigating with people when they come in. And I have a lot of people who come in and they're telling me all their traumas because they know I work with that. That might be the number one reason they're coming into me, is because they've heard that I work with the floor of the mouth and untangling traumas. And I'm like, I would love to help you with that if I can. I don't know. Let's see. And so one of the things that some people, if they're dwelling on the traumas, I'm like, well, first of all, happily, or I rightfully refer to somatic therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, whenever people need counseling. Like I'm gonna talk about that a lot because I have a huge value for that. But if they're there with me for this somatic journey of untangling issues from tissues, usually if I'm led to help them untangle something and it's not just body work, then I'll look into what their strengths, gifts, and also their proclivities are towards creativity and expression. And I'll say,
Hmm.
is it poetry in you? Is that something you resonate with? And they'll say, yeah. How did you know? I've written poetry for like 20 years and now for the last year I haven't been able to. So I'm like, well, let's tackle that. And so if you would, and I usually have them do this at home after the session, put at the top of the page this word, and it could be your sternum if that came up in our appointment. It could be your mandible, whatever it is. And then I'll hear the phrase, or they'll hear the phrase, and I'll say, and write this phrase underneath it, and then just let your expression come through. They could be a song that they need to write. It could be a painting they need to paint. It could be anything like that. But I just actually, that's kind of my segue into talking about the expressive arts. For me, are a really beautiful way. We could just say the arts, creativity, are a beautiful way that some people can go there to not just address trauma and like help heal from it.
But release, right? But be able to actually release. That's why
Release.
we're so but that's why we're so emotionally connected and drawn to this stuff, right? If you're an art lover, you're seeing something because you can connect with the pain, you can connect with the joy. You can connect on a level because that's a medium that you really can feel. I think a pretty universal one is music,
Yeah.
right? I mean, everybody, and the different genres is just that frequency meeting you at wherever you need. So you feel seen, you feel connected. And right, that's why like listening to a song, you'll feel like someone's talking to you,
Hmm.
right? Like
Hmm.
there's a resonate that frequency in the sound is just power. I mean, even when we're doing it at therapeutic stuff, being able to hum, it just relaxes everything. We didn't realize the importance of bringing breathing and singing and movement into anything we do with our body because it almost like opens up that portal, like, portal, or like even just the entry points of getting the human body to be open to say, hey, we're going to change the frequency right now. We're
Yeah.
going to we're going to relax. So is that one area like that you're really starting to feel connected with, is just this like medium of artwork or however one expresses themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before I ever got into the healing arts of chiropractic and bodywork, and I was a chemist and studied molecular biology. I was in theater and dance. And so theater, dance, and song, part of a barbershop quartet, did musicals. And if I could say, like we interpretive dance and movement was one of my biggest art forms. And of course, like anybody growing up in the 80s, I emulated Michael Jackson. I mean, who didn't, right?
Yeah.
Some people, it was Prince. Some people, it was Michael Jackson. But I'm like, hey, I respected both and I looked up to both. So that creative flow has been there, and it actually really paved the way for me to get into a place to where I could even connect with myself and my emotions. And it was tremendously healing. And it provided a backdrop for me to have a level of integration that I didn't grow up with, because I grew up in a lot of chaos and stress and didn't know who I was. There was no echolocation. It's talking about sound. So having the state of integration and wholeness come, then getting into the healing arts, I feel like I had the fortune of having gone through the struggle, then the resolution to some degree, to where then I could hold space for people and feel more fully who I was in the room, stay present with my connection so that I could tap into intuition to see what was going on with them and what they needed. And
Mm.
naturally through that, staying linear on the body, working with tissues, sometimes is all people needed. But usually they had some pain and issue. And if it comes up, I just know from my experience and how important the arts are for healing, I could only help but give them, and I've talked to so many different, OTs over time who have been like OTs who use art and art therapy. And I'm like, yeah, naturally art and sound therapy came into my practice. So to kind of talk about the technical part of that frequency in bioresonance, scalar technology. I use all the biohacking tech out there, or I have, if you want to dive into that.
Yeah, well, I'd love to just sit on the art thing for something, because I don't know if you know, I think you might know this. I mentioned to you. So, right, a lot of the work or the things that I have done is kind of been about unraveling anxiety,
Yeah.
right? I think whether or not I knew it or not, it was like to live the way I'm living. And I mean, you even see like it was like torturous in my own body, right? And so
Mhm.
like I feel like my spiritual, like my soul or my voice was always trying to help me find elements of things that could show me a different way, because it was like feeling like a prisoner in my own head. Like, to be honest, my biggest enemy is my own mind,
Mhm.
right? Like nobody is harder on me than my mind. And I feel like sometimes my body would would take most of the brunt of it, right? Because it was easier to be hard on that. But one of my very first business, well, my first business ever was an art school.
Hmm.
And I have no, right, I can't paint, or I'm not very artistic. That's what I said. But a very good friend of mine at the time, really amazing artist. And both of us with our own fears and obstacles of things, of why she wasn't able to do things, we kind of made we picked up each other's weaknesses. And long and short, one of the areas we ended up working with is realizing that art was connecting with the people that were trying to get some type of outlet, like in some way. And then art therapy ended up being business development for corporate companies. We lived in Hackettstown, New Jersey, where M&M Mars, where M&Ms are made.
Mhm.
And that was actually the first corporate account I ever pitched
Mm.
for art consulting, like that we could come in and they could break out and do art. I didn't know it at the time, but realistically, doing some type of art, some type of element, touching clay, the coldness of a clay,
Mhm.
of getting your hands dirty. We had pottery wheels. I mean, the art store went from, we were going to blow glass for bongs, and then we were going to, then we had a cartoonist, and then we ended up then we created an actual business where kids would paint pottery and stuff. But we ended up having all these art classes for all these different modalities. And it was just amazing how art could bring people together during really traumatic times, like really stressful times. And there was a peace in the studio, even though the people that were coming in and out of that studio would bring a lot of big energy. It's like almost like the elements of the paint and the clay and all, whatever it was. We even had poetry readers and cartoonists come in, and the way they connected with all of the elements in which they used, it was like their body was outletting in a way. And I didn't know it at the time I went on to this thing, but it's always been about grounding. And I didn't realize at the time how grounding art can be, and whatever your art element is. So it's interesting, because I feel like it still comes back to all healthier ways of people being able to support their bodies and to be able to function in a really chaotic world.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. It sounds like I want to be there at those meetings, because what a multi, kind of just an amazing time of unlocking. I mean, yeah.
Who would, yeah, I mean, right now the ideal place will be an art studio doing breath work, having a chiropractor. Yeah, the wellness center now just builds on a whole other
Oh,
level,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So yeah, because I know in Chicago you started talking a little bit more about this art element and like just being able to express a little bit. So this is definitely a big part of you, right? This is a big part of what you're doing in your new work,
Yeah, yeah,
trying to get
absolutely.
into these elements.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like anybody with like when you realize for me, I feel like at this point I have, you know, taught that floor of mouth protocol that I have, which is now being called the floor of four, and it's distilled now into these four main areas of the body that connect to the floor of the mouth. And it's kind of like I feel that as that's being put into its crystallized formats right now to go out all over, it's like I feel like, okay, good, I like can step back and say, now let's get to, as a person who's journeying in my own career arc and trajectory, I'm like, now I'm ready to get into those things that really have been foundational for me, and without them I wouldn't be even functioning on an integrated way to be able to fathom having a download. And then, of course, I think about just the tremendous, like you said, music, comedy, the arts, like being silly. My kids have a 9, 7, and a 5-year-old. My wife Dawn. We're just dancing. Like we're having breakfast and then we just start dancing and slow dancing, my wife and I. But then the kids are just there wiggling and then playing. I'm like, those are the moments that really, like, who doesn't look at those? And you're like, if we just had a lot more of those moments, like it makes everything better. I know I'm dipping into my podcast, which is called Compromise to Alchemize. And it's like the only way to go from compromise, suffering, struggling to alchemized, beautiful, golden, together, whole healed is not techniques, and it's not palate expansion. It's not tongue tie releases. It's not somatic therapies. It's not going to Neel. It's not like that's not going to fill in the gaps that we need. It's having a village, having joy, having dance and song. And I'm not an expert in any of that, so I won't talk about it too much more. But you know, I think that if I wasn't talking about the importance of song, and for me, I think I'll talk about the 5 M's as a really tried and true practice that I've carried out for probably 10 years. And I do teach this in some of my online courses. I have a community that I've, ushered along in helping them integrate, because that's the word, right? How do we get connected? So I am really that place in my career where I'm saying, hey, if I'm not talking about integration, interoception, mindfulness, then intuitive empathy, right? Feeling, building up our antennae so that we can not only feel what other people feel, because that's a big part of how I work, but feel ourselves so that we can know that we're present with what we know we want to accomplish in this world out of pure passion, destiny, and also like conviction. Then yeah, I would be missing the mark. So the 5 M's, I'll go into that real quick because it's a really great practice for anybody out there who
Yeah, of
wants to
course.
integrate. It's music, meditation, and it's also musing, like pondering, mapping, and movement.
All right. So wait, what do them again? So what do we have? It's
So music, meditation,
music,
meditation,
meditation,
musing.
musing. What do you mean by musing?
Musing is when you muse on something and when you like ponder it,
Like
but
ponder it.
think
Okay.
about it. Yes. So
So could you say so? And a lot of let's go. This is I appreciate this, but let's go in a little bit. Meditation is not easy for a lot of people. That's one thing I've realized, and I definitely struggled with it for a long
yeah,
time, and I still have. I it's definitely it's a muscle. You got to practice it daily, and it only gets better with time and consistency.
yeah, absolutely.
That is the hardest part. So I think sometimes people can almost confuse pondering or overthinking as meditation, because most people will say to me, oh, I try to meditate but all I do is think, or my mind won't stop, and then that can sometimes go into pondering. If you're teaching these, what would be like your quick how to separate those two?
Yeah, I mean, musing is like when you're like, I'm inspired by that gold and you might say this out loud. You're like, oh, the gold. And I like gold because it's like alchemy. And oh, I love that. And I love alchemy. And I love the way that alchemy is mystical and magical. Meditation would be I look at the gold and I get lost in its hue. And I might say hue as a word, but I might just get lost again and hear the echo of the word hue on the other side of the painting. I might imagine
Mm.
what does it look like to be on the other side of that painting with very few words, right? I'm not saying a lot of words here. And I might close my eyes and then look through the painting from the other side at me through that golden hue. That's meditation, and it can look like a lot of different things. But meditation is a stillness where you might have movement on the inside of your mind. You might even move your body, but it's for the purpose of creating this beautiful connection with you and yourself and whatever it might be that is an inspiration for you to meditate upon. So that's my biggest kind of difference right there, if that helps.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
And then, so okay. So you got the meditation, you got musing.
Mm-hmm.
So musing is us pondering and pondering, like you said, anything that's coming to mind, inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to technically be pondering on negative, correct?
Yeah, no, and I usually have like this. It could be a 15-minute little flow that you do, or 5 minutes. I like to say the five. You could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, or any multiple of five if you want to apportion it that way. And you might just be sitting there with a journal, and you might write these 5 M's down, like I do, even when I've done it millions of or many times. And I might say like, okay, ponder, amusing, what am I musing about? And I might, say gold, write gold down. And it's so for me, it's not I have to cover linear things, but I will though, if I'm like, all I can do is ponder like the problem that one of my kids is going through, then I'm going to put that down and ruminate on it, because by me musing over what the problem is, it might be negative, but I want to be available for a solution, or at least to be empathizing. So definitely I'm not about turning on the news and spiraling down, or the social media and spiraling down a negative, and never ending pathway. That for sure I want to safeguard and protect against whenever we can. That being said, it's kind of like exploring pleasure and pain is sometimes what we need to do in order to integrate and connect, right? So that's the kind of musing part of that. Music is this category you already talked about. It's big, it's open. We could put on our favorite song. We could, for me, hum, and sing. It's really cool because I think we're all musical, and some of us grow up with playing in just singing, and somebody in our family sings. But I also like to talk about there are ways in which we can get a little deeper into that and use apps like Newcalm, Nucalm, or Brain FM, or some people put on solfeggio frequencies, right? Or different frequencies that heal. Like that's amazing because we can just kind of dive into whatever kind of music helps you to feel present. And again, you might just like all of a sudden be inspired to sing a song and then just let those words come out. But we have, so those are like the main music, meditation, musing. And then the last two, I'll go with movement, kind of an easy one in one way, because it's like if you put on a song and you're swaying to it, great. You've got movement going. Somebody who's really into fascia and whatever kind of fascial movement technique, or whether we're doing the melt method, or we're foam rolling, or we're doing Brooke from Musical Breathwork. I just interviewed her, and we're doing her fascia flow or mighty breath, all these amazing things out there. It's good to have those tools, but the movement is actually to feel embodied and connected to ourselves, versus
Mm-hmm.
dig into that tight fascia for the purpose of releasing it, or even digging into the floor of our mouth, or digging into our lips and cheeks and pterygoids. It's like this is an integrated practice that's meant to be connecting, nourishing, and for me really helps me. So if I need to go do those other things, when I do, I'm much more tuned into what I need in the moment. So then the last
Yeah.
last category would be mapping, which is for me, they're also important, but mapping is a very significant part of this. In fact, I was driving over to the office here, and I was thinking about just like, ooh, I need a quick burst of inspiration. And I put on Brendan Burchard's podcast, and he's talking about his latest one, The Secret to Some Kind of Success. I don't know. His titles are great, right? We love them. And it's a 16-minute episode, and he's talking about the importance of journaling. And I'm just like, yes, I've been an avid journaler since, boy, we're talking about like at least 10 years old. So it's like 35 years. So I've been, journaling for 35 years, meditating for at least 25. And for me, they go hand in hand, right? So
Mm,
journaling is good, but I actually talk about mapping, and some others talk about this, but for me, I just saw it as a way to describe how I capture and note and chart my journey of Neel moving through time and space. So it might be the journal page that I'm writing on. It is going to be that, but
yeah.
it's not just a page where I write how I feel. It'll be like if I feel like my day needs to get a different timbre of tone and frequency, I need to like lean into the day. I use what's called graphotherapy, which is therapy through writing, to write cursive that leans forward so that I'm momentum is leaning forward.
Ah, that you're leading into the future. Yeah, you're going forward, not into the back.
Yeah.
You know, can I bring this up, this whole concept, which is great,
Mhm.
is no matter what somebody is going through, or they end up whatever biohacking or working on their bodies or myofunctional therapy, anything that I would say is, I don't even know this umbrella. I hate when people say, oh, is this different alternative healthcare? And I want
Yeah.
like it, this is healthcare.
Right.
Healthcare is treating the entire body. I'd actually say, traditional medicine is more like, I don't know. They're like the when I almost want to use a joke. They're like the National Guard. I don't know. Like most of the, you should only go to them when you're drowned. I don't know, right? It's like trauma is major. Of course, you want to go to a modern ER room if you get into a car accident or
Absolutely.
you get into something that they're lifesavers, right? They're acute, come in and work. But I don't know if our current medical system is about making you thrive and be the best version of yourself day in and day out. I think that's more what we do. I think we're trying to
Hmm.
help people build awareness. But the one thing in awareness comes with consistency, right? To know yourself is to be consistent and to do practice. But I do think in general, we have a big, I mean, if you want to call it an epidemic or something, and I'm part of it, don't get me wrong. I really like struggle with consistency because of all the outside noise, right? Living in that fight or flight, that survival mode. I can't stress enough, and I think you can talk. I mean, you've did the floor mouth on me in Chicago. It's like I'm so like there's a like a bungee cord just wanting to pull me backwards, right? Like that wants me to stay in those repetitive, cycles of clench, grind, tighten, overthink, react, you know what I mean? Stressor. And due to from childhood stuff and programming. And so it's hard, I think, for a lot of us to think that there is a better way to live than that. Right. And I think ultimately what happens for the masses is that, I look at my own son. It's easier for me to think that he's having all these issues because it's just happening to him than recognize the fact that it's because of a lineage that he's got me and he's got Joe and he's got all these things and he took on more side effects that maybe are different than our daughter did. But it's all of this lineage. It's passed down. It's environmental, epigenetic, all of the things. And the amount of my awareness as a parent and consistency that it takes for me to break the cycles is a lot. It's exhausting. And I really absolutely recognize, and I think most of the listeners are going to say, I love what you're talking about, but it feels so hard to actually implement it and to live that life. Your wife, your children, it's such a blessing to just see how you guys, I can speak of this. You don't just speak on this, you live this, right? Like you as a whole, your family, you guys are a nice unit that you're always trying to walk the walk as well as speak the walk. And it's not easy for a lot, right? I think you talked about you homeschool the kids. Am I correct? Yeah. Like, putting your kids in the traditional school setting naturally like pulls you back into that grind of the thing. I can see it, right? You want to keep up with everything. And then I walk around schools and I see all these moms clenching and smiling and doing the part. And I feel their body so tight and I can resonate to that. And I wonder with the 5M, the things that you're talking about, do you ever struggle with this with seeing people like me, right? That like I yearn for this I yearn for healing, but then I keep pulling back into this cycle. Yeah, I don't know where your mind goes with me bringing that up, or what are your thoughts? Like what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go to myself for a second and say that I was moving to Santa Barbara has been beautiful, but it's brought up like moisture in the air. It's brought up lung issues. So am I doing as much of my 5Ms? No, I'm like, I had an asthma attack for like 6 hours the other night, and I
Oh my
was
gosh.
just there meditating on. That's a little joke to say. I wasn't meditating. I was breathing to breathe, and I'm like,
Just
I
survive.
just need
Yeah.
air to breathe. Of course, I'm doing the whole deep dive into all the things to address this. I've come a long way. I grew up with horrible asthma, a bubble boy called frail, had 7 medicines a day that I was given. I was on a nebulizer since I was 4, for asthma and a bunch of other conditions. So, I did have like these beautiful moments of play and things. It wasn't until 2015, 16 when I demolished the stronghold asthma I'd had on my life. Now, it's been 9 years since then, and I haven't dealt with it almost at all, except for a few triggers until we moved here. And I had a few instances that came up. And the last few days, I've been feeling so much better. I'm addressing it from a multifactorial perspective and all the things that you could ever say. Everybody's listening. They're like, oh, Neel, did you check into mold? 100%. We are like, I'm a deep diver into all these things, and I've been using frequency healing. I'm using all the normal things, all the extra normal things. But, like, first of all, just to make it real, like I'm letting, like I struggle. I struggle with that, and I struggle to maintain my own practices. I struggle to keep up the momentum. So yeah, I have an hour drive to Woodland Hills to go see patients there. I'm going to use that hour to catch up on voice memos, sing songs. If I'm not like ready to meditate and just jump into this still state, I need to be inspired. I need to hear a podcast. I need to, we need to intake. So there are sometimes I think I might be all over the place, but I want to say there are some times where the 5Ms doesn't look like me giving anything. It's me getting
Mm.
getting all those things. It's like put on 5 minutes of a podcast that just really, or a comedy. I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts because it's my jam right now. I love that. I'm gonna listen to musicians that inspire me. I'm gonna be provoked and like I think I was talking about this with my wife the other day when she was like saying something and we're like, yeah, we need the village. Like right now, we are needing help with different things, and I do think we're at a very blessed place where our kids can go to farm school by the sea for 2 days. They can go to nature rangers where they explore nature with guides for 2 days out of the week. And then they can go to a fifth day of school at the zoo. That's their homeschooling. That's what it looks like.
Wow. It's
So
pretty amazing.
we've led by intention for years to get to this point. So it's taken a lot of work, and my wife has worked extremely hard to vision cast that. And she's even more of a futurist, even more of a view. Well, even I shouldn't say even because I'm making myself sound like some visionary. She's way more visionary than I am. She's way more gifted and skilled in a lot of things that we could say I love to talk about. But together, we even had this moment where, like last night, she brought up things that I'm like, oh, I triggered, and I'm like, no, you're right. I'm not doing as much at home as I need to by picking up clutter, by picking up the things. So I just want to say, like, the only way I don't to talk about this is to be real. Is like I struggle, but yet I think life is a process of unmaking and making. And it's like taking whatever moment we have to grab on. And I know so many people who say the same thing. They're like, if I'm with a mom and I'm teaching her how to do body work on her baby, and I get the look on her face like, this is too much. And I'm like, this is too much. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, how about I don't teach you how to unlock the thyroid? I don't teach you how to unlock the kidney in tummy
Yeah.
time. How about I teach you how to do the third thing, which will make a lot of difference, but maybe, at least we'll get you through the next visit to me. She's like, breath of, you can see
Yeah.
the
You just like
exhale.
eliminated, took the valve a little bit,
Yeah.
decompressed there.
But I also
Yeah.
know in moments like this, I love giving tools like this, the 5 M's and etc., because there are other moms or parents who I've not given as fully what they could have done. And then the next time they come in, they're like, yeah, I just didn't know what to do. So I'm like, oh, right. So I give it all and then I distill it down. I give it all and distill it down. They might be overwhelmed, but if I can co-regulate with them and bring them back, then I can give them one tool. But there's the other people out there who they need more and they want more and they're hungry for more and they might be just as desperate as the person who's overwhelmed that can't handle more. Different brains, different types work differently. So I love giving it all because then somebody could say, today I couldn't handle what you just said. But 3 days from now, a week from now, 3 weeks from now, I've heard this time and time
You might
again.
be able to.
They're like, I just remembered that one thing that you said, and I did that, and it totally changed everything. And
Mm.
so I'm like, yeah, we just have to bite off what I actually didn't say this, but one of my favorite definitions of meditation is going back to, the Hebrew, it says to chew on, right? And so to talk about our favorite, our love of getting people to help them with their mastication and chewing and all of that, chewing on something can look different where sometimes we need things pre-digested for us if we're a bird, a little baby bird, and sometimes we need to build up those muscles and we can tear into that food that's needing more chewing. Weirdly, I compared us to a chickadee and a human all at once. I don't know how that went, but all I mean is,
Well, no, actually, I
yeah,
think you're breaking down something is that this body, first of all, let's just talk about the mouth. Let's just go back for a little bit
back
just
to
to
the
give us
mouth.
some grinding. The mouth to me is the window. And I think not just to me, I think most people agree. It's the window to the body. Whoever you believe created us did create one window so you could kind of see, more than one, but one that's definitely open. And that is the mouth. You can see so much. I mean, the tongue, the saliva, the tissue, it's telling you a lot. Just because you don't know how to read it or look at it or understand it doesn't mean that's not factual. And I think we are getting a little bit more in a time that I think the airway dentistry movement, myofunctional therapy is putting this concept a little bit on the map, that the mouth is telling us something. The mouth has always been telling us something, whether we want to hear it or not, but there's a visual element to it. And with that, I think it's really unlocking and unraveling a lot of things for people. When people are like, well, I need to see it to believe it. And I'm like, well, I can show you. Let me show you what I see and what's going on here. And there's just a lot of logic behind it, to be honest, right? This isn't like crazy complex concepts. I mean, if you think about what we're talking about and you just sit back for a second, you're like, kind of makes sense. And if we just go back full circle for a second, when I was talking about my gut, I was listening to a quote and someone said, well, what made you change your mind? And he said, well, my gut. And once I really listened to the other answer, it just wasn't logical. And when I thought that most things that the divine or the spiritual or God, whatever puts out, are pretty logical. They make sense, right? So if it's not jiving in your body and you feel like it's off, and then the latter or the opposing discussion just is not 100% clicking, there's something into it. And so this whole floor of the mouth tour that you went on, and then still wrapping up there, this really became a bridge that I think for you that you came into. I mean, you were dabbling in the airway world or you were there, but really this is taking you to a level that I would say a lot more of my colleagues, they all knew you, but now they've taken your courses. Being in Chicago, we were in a room with just great minds. And I mean, when I say they were just like taking in everything because it was clicking on so many levels. Like I hadn't sat in a room where pretty elite people in our industry are like, I'm not 100% sure what we're doing. And then by the end of the 2 days, the feedback was like, wow, how did we not how were we not doing this before? Do you mind talking to us a little bit, especially because a lot of my listeners are myofunctional therapists. And of course, right now, as I look at the clock, it's 11:11. So this is
Yeah,
a beautiful number right
there
here
we
to hit.
go.
Everybody knows that's my number right there. So I think we're talking about something important in this moment.
Hmm.
Is how did this resonate? Tell me what you got from this, and what did you learn from the people in the room, vice versa. I'm super excited to just hear your take on all that.
Yeah. Well, it's great because if you add up the four ones, you get four, and the floor four is my distillation and crystallization. So I'll chime in on that one with you. Um,
Awesome.
yeah. So each one has taught me so much, from Reading to Denver to Boise, Phoenix to Boise to Chicago, of course, LA. And it kind of makes me think about, I'll jump to that really quickly, but it makes me think about when I taught my intuitive movement practice that was based on an early form of the 5 M's. I taught it in Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, the States. And I would look into the culture of the people, specifically in the room at the time, and I would see how I couldn't teach a blanket protocol. I needed to attend to the needs of the people in the room and see and sense what's their makeup, what do they need. So Singapore, I was ready to teach them everything, 60 people in a room, and they're all crowded into this tiny part of the room. And I tell them, spread out. You need a kinesphere. That's like a bubble of movement around you. And they were timid and afraid. And I realized, because Singapore is a very tall island and a very small island, it's high-rise buildings and everything. People walk close to one another, but there's not much emotional intimacy. They don't know how to
Mhm.
be transparent and feel their feelings. So there is a very walled off skyscraper that's walking next to one another. So we had to spend the first, portion of the training just on helping them feel comfortable being far away from one another and feeling their feelings. I think that was the big thing. So I learned so much when I get into different rooms. And I mean, I was amazed. I was just thrilled that you were there to be there, and let alone speak at the event. And also we had Kevin Boyd, we had Milt Gabelis. I was just so
Joy
happy.
Lance,
And
Joy
Joy,
Lance
Joy
being there was
Lance was there to speak on the panel, and her contribution was so good. We had Kelly Hibler Wells, which is an amazing chiropractor, craniopath. And then, a bunch of other amazing people. Brooke, I just want to name everybody now at the training. But I feel that seeing them engage with the work was just really fulfilling. And I think I see people take away different, things. So one person, I could say, was working on these floor four areas, the four main areas of the body, and you work on them and you go back to the mouth and you see this dramatic change. And I just love that aha look on somebody when they say, like Shalom, who was there. She actually came to Reading, and so then she came to do this second training, and she's already sent me so many testimonials of, like, I was doing this virtually even with a mom, and I just had her go through the floor for it, and she was so, for her, and then the babies that are being seen with this too. It's like just so much change happens. So there's the myofunctional therapists that were there in the room too, like Jen, Leslie. Oh, I love that they're always looking for more. And I think you, as myos, speaking to you, you are the liaisons of care in this airway space. But you also, like, I just, Erica is another one. You guys just looking at what more, because you see that there's so much more. So when I talk about the floor of the mouth, I know I want to pay homage, pay homage, right? Homage, that word just,
homage. Yeah.
yeah, homage to the true surveyors of the floor of the mouth as myofunctional therapists. And I think one of the aha moments that I saw in a few of the minds there was when I showed them that you can melt the periosteum of tori. You can
Mhm.
change the trabecula of tori. You can actually create resorption in tori, mandibular tori specifically, by working in a very specific way with the floor of the mouth and the periosteum of the torus. And that blows everybody away. So I think,
And just for some people that might not, I've been lucky enough
yeah,
lately, got some listeners that might not be professionals. And just to understand, when we talk about airway, and when we're talking about airway, it's understanding, is your body working ultimately for the airway and for the greater good? And we know the tongue itself is such a big, large group of muscles that if it's not strong, it's not toned, or even if it is really strong and toned in other ways, the floor of the mouth, everything that's connecting the tongue to the lower mandible, all that things creates its own obstructions, its own concerns, its own tightness, rigidness. And a lot of times, especially for my myos out there, we're so uber focused on just the tongue. And we know about the frenulum, but we still have a lot more to learn and understand about the connective tissue in which the frenulum is being part and activated in all of this. Am I kind of correct in what I'm saying
absolutely.
in that area there? And I think this is an area where myofunctional therapists, the more we can learn about the connectiveness to it, it actually makes us be able to hold better conversations with our providers, especially the people that are doing tongue tie releases or doing that, to understand the why and the how a lot more, that it really is not about the release. It's understanding the connectiveness and all of the habits that are embedded to it. And then sometimes, yes, a release is needed, but it's understanding the whole ecosystem of it, more of it. And I think your layer really just takes us, right, just it's a funnel, right? And most of us are all in that top, maybe 1, 2, 3. I look at the floor of mouth really kind of coming into this mid level of this funnel now. And it's almost like a richer flavor of detail and understanding. So I think it's just important for the listeners to understand that. So, but the floor of mouth for you as a chiropractor, this is not really this is kind of in your wheelhouse, but yet the chiropractors that were at the conference understood it in a different way, but yet I realized that they were really missing the myo part of it in a lot of ways. Like there were some things that, right, that it was like they were bringing some stuff and some on the other, right?
I'll just kind of speak to it in that, like, I think there's amazing healers working on the floor of the mouth. There's amazing therapists working with the floor from a, myo, OT, all of the things. I actually feel like the ones that were there, I see people who have seen countless people. I think the gap, that's why my floor 4, the goal is to make it standard of care. And it's already set to do that in some offices next year. And then I'm going broader with it, is that the missing link is not about working on the floor, and it's not even the exercises of the myo world, the tongue and any of that. It's the connectivity between the floor and really specific areas in the body. So the floor connects to 70 areas that I've categorized through the map that I created out of an algorithm that I've seen over nearly a decade of patients. And then when I distill it down, because it was a dentist, Steve Lamberg, who said, Neel, could you just do like a top 7 or something like that, or a top 10? And I'm like, totally. So I've whittled it down. But then I realized I came into this beautiful time where I saw these 4 main areas, and the head, the throat, the sides, and the feet are the main.
So the 4 main ones are the
head, the throat, the sides underneath the ribs, and the feet
underneath the ribs. Okay.
And the feet. And more detail there for sure, but that's why the floor 4 is coming out, and it'll have a lot of detail and layer for people to really understand.
And this is 4 areas of tension and tightness that you could be holding. Mm-hmm. If you don't unravel all of them or work on if you look on all 4, you'll be able to really understand if somebody can release or not release. Like just maybe go in a little bit more. What can you expect from it?
What you'd see is that the floor of the mouth has a direct connectivity to these areas. So unless they're being worked on, you're not really getting the floor of the mouth to loosen. So that's why I'm saying I've had so many myofunctional therapists and body workers who are like, we're doing all the things, but why can't they do all these, sort of set points in terms of therapy and care? Because I'm like, well, one, we have to change from a mindset of we're doing a bunch of things for a certain amount of time, and we have to tactically get an effect that we know is unmistakable. And with the floor 4, we get an unmistakable effect of, for the most part, I would say the floor of the mouth loosens so much that it causes this widespread freeing up of tension in the face, the head, and the body. But also, it is about releasing tension in these 4 main areas in different ways. But I broaden it to say it's not just about massaging, adjusting organs, or any of that. We can use light therapy, we can use vibration, we can use tuning forks. It's about activating and awakening, and often, yes, removing tension, but sometimes regulating the local nervous system of that area. So I just want to speak to all the different kinds of people who listen to this, who might not be hands on healers, and you might be a different kind of healer, or you might not even call yourself a healer, but you know that you can look at a part of the body, either feel it, or for me, what I love doing is having people feel their own. I guide people in this all the time, and I say to patients, I'm like, well, if I'm working with them virtually, I'm like, we check these areas, we check the mouth, and the flow is they work on their bodies, they recheck the mouth, and they might do that 1, 2, 3, 4 times max. And then all of a sudden, the floor of the mouth is so loose, the tongue can lift way more easily. The lips and the cheeks free up
All
so much,
release.
and the
Mm.
head, cranials, and down through the calf muscles that turn into butter, inner thigh muscles loosen. So it is really a like magic moment and a dramatic moment that's unmistakable. And I think when I can get people to understand that, or when they have experienced it on the table, or when they're now going to somebody who's learned this method, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's why, kind of when I gave that rundown at the beginning, I'm like, now we can start working on you. And I realized how many years I worked on people before I ever got them to that state. And that means it always took me more sessions, more time to get them better. Or like what you said, to locate this to a very specific subset of people that might be listening, or whether you are a provider or a patient, it's like to get them ready for their tongue tie release and to help them after.
Well, yeah, I think the beauty of how we've come, in 2017 to till like 2020, it was all about the tongue tie. That's why everybody was talking about the tongue tie because, we had so many people not talking about that for so long, and so there was a large group of the population or the people that were struggling with these issues that were so wrapped up they did need a structural release, right? Something that went in
Yeah.
physically to remove it. But because these tissues are retractive, they want to go back to where they were. They want to go back to the comfort. As I was saying, that bungee cord in the back of my body that wants to pull me back into those repetitive, retractive thoughts and feelings, self-sabotage, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. Just going in and releasing a tissue and then hoping that the body reacts properly, it really does. I think one of the largest variables of healing is how and what state the body was in before that procedure started. I think we've seen that. I think we see that in surgeries across the country. If we walked into ORs, right? You have somebody who's good mindset, great, just good energy. Something unfortunately happens and they have to get into. Their healing tends to be a little bit lighter, a little bit nicer, quicker, responsive. Somebody comes in heavy, a lot of other heavy metals, whatever their bodies are going through, their bodies are working hard, more resistant, more retractive. Their healing journeys are a lot longer. I don't think I'm completely off by saying that. I think we can look at it in many ways, and it's not about more medications. It's about getting the body to want to heal, to prepare. And I think opening this conversation of looking at the whole body before you go in these elective procedures, obviously, that's where a lot of us are talking before you do a palate expansion or all of these things. Is the body ready? Is the body in a good state to move? Have you decreased inflammation so that the bones can do what they need to do, right? It's a lot of, I think that's this big thing of, well, the bones won't move. I'm like, well, I think it has to do with the fact that there's a lot of muscles and tissues wrapped around that's inhibiting the bone from unraveling and unlocking and allowing for these processes to change. But that requires consistency. It requires awareness, and it requires a human to do the work. And a lot of times humans don't want to do things if they don't feel it. And I think this industry, the world that we live in now, I mean, God, if it doesn't happen within 2.2 seconds, our attention spans run away. And I think that's one thing where your floor of the mouth, I mean, you can feel it pretty quickly. Like it's a good short, you know what I mean? It's like scrolling through Instagram.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So you're giving people that quick feeling of like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. What was the one exercise that you had us all do in this circle when we first started in the morning? We were doing some breathing, and what do you remember what we did?
Yeah. So the and actually I was going to go back to that time and say that was one of my favorite moments, and it is when I get to do these roundup. It's like in the form in the honor of dance movement therapy. It's you always round up, and so because I have a history in dance, to collect hands, get together, share space in that way. I love doing that, and so actually to have several of you, one person crying in tears saying, I did not plan to be crying, another person, confess to the group of the feeling of feeling needy and it feeling okay to say that. Another, person later said something like, I just, they were feeling different temperatures. And then another person, like any of us in time, figuring out like, how do I connect with myself? That's the goal of that, was to say, let's connect, let's work on our antennae, build up our awareness and our ability to not only feel ourselves, but holding hands with others, feel. So, floor of mouth and tongue meditation is one of the ways that I'll do that with people, and or tongue mapping is another add-on. So maybe I'll do like a quick minute of saying, for those of you out
Yeah.
there who want to experience this, this is a really simple version. It's some of you have done things like this, but I want you to just be aware of where your feet are, and if you're driving, just be aware of your feet, but maybe just focus on how they feel on the gas pedal, or
Mm-hmm.
if you're on cruise control, keep your eyes open if you're driving, keep your eyes open if you have things to attend to. For those who can close your eyes, you can go ahead and do that. And I want you just to direct awareness to the inside of your body, right? Some people, you might say, what does that mean? You can say, well, you're used to looking at things outside of you. Now look at things from the inside of you. Imagine what your face looks like if you're looking behind it. Imagine what the inside of your head looks like. It's just a few seconds to say, we'll get out of our current state. But I want you to, we'll just jump right to, go ahead and focus on, where is your tongue, right? Just be aware of where it is. Was it on the floor? Was it on the roof? Was it pushing against your teeth? Now I want you to go ahead and put it on the roof of your mouth, and as much of your tongue as you can on the roof, right? And go ahead and, whether you want to make this sound of or clicking, make that contact, and then go ahead and plant your tongue up there, and then breathe in through your nose if you can, and out. But then I want you to take the tip of your tongue and I want you to paint the roof of your mouth. Paint the roof from the front to the back and left to right, and just go all the way across. And you can do all the way front and back from left to right, and then all the way left to right from front to back. And you're just using your tip like a paintbrush to activate and make aware the palate. Then I want you to take your tongue and I want you to direct it down. And the only place you can go inside your teeth and gums under your tongue is the floor of your mouth. So if you wonder where the floor is, if your tongue's pushing down in your mouth, it's there. And I want you to do the same thing. Use the tip of your tongue to just paint your floor from the left to right, far back as you can go, and then front to back from left to right. And then take a little more time here and maybe stiffen your tongue, of the tip of your tongue, a little bit to gently massage the floor of your mouth. And now while you're doing that, be aware of your feet again. Feel, where are your feet touching the ground? Or where are they not touching the ground? If you're sitting in a different way, be aware of whatever part of your body is touching the surface, the bed or the floor, etc. Just take yourselves into that place to become aware. Then we'll kind of finish out by saying, put your tongue to the roof of the mouth. Breathe. Notice that shift. And if you didn't pick it up, and if it didn't do it for you, let's try one more time. Put your tongue to the floor of your mouth. Move it around, massage it a little bit. Be aware of your feet or your body. Be aware of the top of your head or somewhere else in your body, the back of your shoulders. If you're sitting against a chair, feel where your contact is. And then now put your tongue to the roof of your mouth. And breathe. Good. And that's just simply an exercise of awareness.
It's amazing how much, like for me, the right side of my body, just like it's this slight where the foot wants to go up, the shoulder wants to go in a little bit. I can almost feel like that side of my face feels a little funky. It's not pain, it's not discomfort, but I can feel like activation
Mm-hmm.
or like unbalancing. And I think that was very interesting. We talked about that, like in the work, some of the stuff we had done, what had come up for me on that side. And I ended up having an implant removed and a root canal tooth taken out on my right side. I had a lot of pressure and buildup on that right side for years, and it's better. It's way more. It's improved greatly, but I can still feel some of the remnants, or like the aftermath of like wanting to activate, or that tightness in that area there.
You might need you needed your
And
T6 adjusted after we did this activation last time. And I do think you might need that stretch right there, whether you get on a foam roller in a little bit or you just arch your back and roll out the mid back for you.
and that's the mid back, right?
Yeah, the mid back. So for you specifically, I actually think you need to do that in order to bring more grounding of what we did to your body. And some people might need that also. You might need some movement. You might need to walk around. You might need.
Can I ask,
Mhm.
does fear linger in those areas, in that back, like things that come up? So like, it's interesting, be careful what you wish for, what you pray for, because sometimes it will come. And one of the interesting things is like, people will talk about abundance or wanting a lot of work, or, or whatever. I want to make more money. I want whatever. And then of course, when that comes, there's this other side of it. It's like, can I keep up with it? Am I valid of it? Am I worth it? All of those things. And I could feel my body like wanting to go into those insecurities. And it's just, again, whatever that relates for people, again, just to bring people to understand that what's going on in your mind, going on in your mouth, they're all connected.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So in that, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. Yesterday I had a day where I felt very tired, and I don't want to say sad, but it was weird because I had this amazing 2 days, like this really great, like, should have been, but it's almost like what you had talked about, feeling joy and feeling trust and acceptance is not something that comes natural for me. Like it's a muscle that I have to exercise and work out a lot. And I'm starting to realize a lot that a lot of people, if they've been in fight or flight for a long period of time,
Mm-hmm.
to just relax or to feel joy is not always something that can happen that easily. Also, I think a lot of patients hold on to these, right? It's my body is more comfortable. It's uncomfortable, but it's more common, or feels more at home, feeling stressed, scared, expecting the worst or whatever, because it's what it was programmed to. And I do think there's a lot of people that might say they can't, but I think they can actually resonate with that, or connect with that a lot. And this whole concept of like listening to the body and being connected to it is so exciting, and because there's another way to live. But I think a lot of myofunctional therapists will struggle a little bit going, Melissa, how can I get, I'm just talking to somebody who doesn't want to talk about the things you're talking about. How did you get from there to here? And I'm like, consistency, not willing to give in. But that's really interesting. So stretching out that mid back will be
Yeah.
really helpful
It's
for grounding.
totally a sympathetic chain. So fight, flight, it's lungs, heart, it's, gallbladder also sometimes too. It's all the areas that have that sympathetic tone that need to go, 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 go. And yeah, I think that some people need activity and motion to feel safe. Whereas if you take away that and there's silence and it's too quiet, that's unsettling. So I do think it's really important to kind of like to say to people that are in between, like you're like, well, I just whenever I get enough time and it's quiet enough, I don't know what to do. I don't feel comfortable with my thoughts, or I need to fill it. Or some people, you just want to accomplish a lot, so you're like, I don't want to. Somebody was like, I don't want to come out of that mode where, and it's like, sure, I could say, out of ease, you may find you're more efficient, and out of a place of suppleness, you might feel you're stronger. Bruce Lee probably said that before I did, but I would say there is something to know where you're at and what you need. And for me, it's like, if you need to, if you need activity and you need, that's why I love music. You put it on and it's nourishing and it gives you this feeling of like together, and you're with somebody, you're with people. There are ways to engage with this. And also I think you may not outwardly facing talk about all these things, but if you hold them in a container of your mind and awareness and consciousness, inevitably you're going to exude that, and you're going to bring people some of that wealth of resource of knowledge and information, even if you don't have conversations like I'll probably have with people where we'll dive into this fully. And it's not always that I'll do that. So I always have to know, when is it not the right time? And when is it not the right encounter? Because I'm here for people to serve them and I want to help them. Um, if I'm on my podcast, Compromise to Alchemize, totally different. We're talking. So we're gonna uncover all those things and dive into the nitty gritty. But yeah, I think it's good to recognize that, like, actually just going back to the activation we just did, it can provoke things. It can make you feel like
Mm.
either you're not. How many times do I think back to circle ups and experiences where I'm like, I don't think I'm getting the same thing as everybody else is. Like, why am I not feeling the feelings of this thing? Why am I not feeling as like I'm part of this? Why am I not feeling? And I'm like, sometimes I was, and I just had to get out of my own head. Sometimes I was, and I just needed to get into my body, embodied. And other times it's like, sometimes you're there as a student and an observer to learn and observe, and but in the moment where things trigger and pain comes up and people are like, whether it's after a session that I do, or when you have that experience in the room where you're like, I'm just feeling like all kinds of bunched up, and I adjusted you, I worked on you, I adjusted some areas. I think we need sometimes to have an outlet for our bodies to be able to unlock more. So if you or others are feeling that, sometimes it is go get body work, but other times it's like, yeah, get on a foam roller, or, also it's like movement and dance and wiggling out. We tell the kids to wiggle out all the time, right? Just wiggle out your bodies. We just need to wiggle out our
Yeah, we gotta
discomfort.
wait. We gotta move our
Move
bodies,
our
get up.
bodies.
What about stretching?
Yeah.
What do you think about stretching?
Stretching it's good. I think all these things live in a category of like, they all have their place.
Okay.
So I'm usually going to tell somebody to free up the fascial adhesions first and unlock the restrictions first, so that stretching is more about using the range of motion we have just acquired through those other means
Mm.
and allowing blood to flow through those areas, versus stretching being the thing that creates that. So that's where
Oh,
I
okay,
place
that's
it.
interesting. So you want people to actually so you'd rather someone wiggle or dance
Oh
or do
yeah.
something like that first before they
Yeah,
go
hands down.
to stretching,
Yeah,
because stretching can almost become resistance again?
stretching doesn't break through adhesions unless you have a sifu, a kung fu master or a gymnast master who's behind you pushing you into the splits, right? That's tearing.
Mhm.
That's tearing. So you often, in the physiological like description of today, we're not creating more suppleness through the stretching. We're more accessing what we've created through movement, or through fascia blasts, theragun, heats, sauna, you know, cold plunge, what all the other things that we could say. Those really are what create state changes in tissue. Then the stretching is more of like a follow through and a part two. That's the way that
A
I,
part 2 to be doing all the other aspects of it.
yeah.
Real quick, red light therapy. What's your thoughts on it?
Oh boy, open up a box of Pandora box, and then I have. I'll probably have a few more minutes here before we.
Yeah,
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 we'll yeah, just because that's one aspect people have been bringing up to my
yeah.
attention a
Oh
little
my
bit is,
gosh, I love
do
it.
we love the red light? Is it necessary? Should we be doing it? I mean, I enjoy it, whether
Yeah,
it's working or not, it feels good in the moment.
I would. No, I'm like I knew this. I was excited to talk to you. So now I'm like, oh, we just we could keep talking on so many things. And red light's one of them, but I think it's like easy for me to put it into a nutshell of like I love red light, I love purple light, I love green light, I love all the colors when it comes to light therapy, photobiomodulation, and we could talk about the fancier lasers like the Nd:YAG and Orlace, Baby Lace, and etc. The
Yeah.
Avant laser. For me, I think it boils down to red light is like a coach who you need encouragement. It's like a healer too, but you need to get in there and heal that wound real quick. Heal that thing. Red light. But if you need somebody who's calm and relaxing, maybe a counselor, and who'll soften you up, you need that purple light. You need that purple light. Green light's
Mm.
special subset I use more sparingly, and that's more about energizing and bringing energy. So while I'm a big fan of red light, and I think it has many purposes, why it's the most documented, verified light that there is in airway and feeding and nervous system regulation, and in those worlds, purple light is the best light on the planet. So I usually would way more gravitate and recommend that.
The purple light.
Yeah, and so you can get that at the sunset. Every sunset has purple in it, whether you see it or not. So I tell people, open your mouths, at the sunset and get it in there. My
Yeah.
kids do that too, and you can get that nervous system regulated and do a lot of other magical things for the body that way.
Well, that's great. I mean, light is important for all of the things to quench our nervous systems, quench our bodies, and quench our tissues. As you said, we could go on and talk for hours. But bring me speed. So for the people to listen, where do we want them to go? What's next? Are we going to take this course online? Are people going to be able to get a certification from it? What's in the works? Where are we going? Where are we sending everybody to?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just follow Dr. Neel Bolchandani on Instagram. That's where I'm at. I've got my floor of the mouth course, which is great. Tongue press, which is also a bite-sized course for anybody with a tongue. The floor,
And that can be done. Can that be done in line or
yeah, those
online?
are
First,
online.
it doesn't have to be online. It doesn't have to be in person.
Those are online. When we have coming up soon is the floor four. It's going to be available for anybody with a mouth, all online. And so then we could say next year I'm teaching in Santa Barbara, so I will have more floor of the mouth training. So stay tuned. Instagram is the best place. People are going to come to my beautiful city of Santa Barbara, and you're welcome to come. Be by the beach and learn here. I'm going to do a little bit of more of deeper mentoring for a few of the people out there who have wanted to go to another level where I really impart more of the work before, not too long I'll be not doing this work anymore. So I'm really excited to lay it in the hands of others, but I will still be consulting and mentoring people beyond 2027. I have speaking engagements that are out there, but what I'm really excited about, my next one is called the Cosmic Mandible. And I'm going to be teaching,
Okay.
it's going to be a digital course. People are going to understand how to bring that retrognathic, retruded mandible forward in a potent way. I'm going to teach people if you just want to learn it for your babies, or if you're the most advanced healer out there who needs to know how to do this for your patients. They're different levels. So I'm
Wow.
finally ready to share the Cosmic Mandible, and it's not about space, but it is, and it's not about embryology, but it is. It's about how the jaw forms in utero and how we can go take our minds to a whole different space to understand the mechanics of this, because it's way different than what I think I've seen out there, and it's also how I've been able to help a lot of people with these issues holistically.
Well, I'm excited and I can't wait for the future because I'm embarking on for next year coming out with the Mind Your Mouth protocols, which will be my version of myofunctional therapy from a spiritual, like from a more holistic spiritual connection, being able to pull in what your body needs instead of just following these basic formats. And I look forward to maybe coming out, spending time with you and collaborating on that with you because I'm going to reach out to all of my favorite connective people to try to bring something from a screening protocol to connect to be able to really figure out what the body needs on more aspects, on a more digestible approach, so then we can get everybody to where you need to be. Well, Neel, I again, thanks, buddy. I appreciate you coming on, and we'll have you on again soon. And let's keep talking. And thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Honestly, if you guys are not following him, if you have not checked it out, you really are. You got to put it on your wish list, especially coming up for the end of the year and coming into next year. It will elevate and change your perspective, and your patients and yourself will thank you for it. So thank you so much, Neel. And a little bit of word of wisdom for the next guest. What's something that when I ask you what mind your mouth means to you, what do you think it means?
Yeah, I think it just means, no, I feel especially compelled to say if you all have a voice, you have agency, you have a mouth that is about your communication, your expression, your needs are important to those around you, your needs are important to yourself. So my version of mind your mouth is just know that you're valuable, you are treasured, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Oh, thanks so much, Neel. We'll talk to you soon.